All right, we are starting our live session this Friday morning. It is Friday, September 15th, for those of you that are hanging out and already know that, or those of you who are popping by and didn't know that 6-7 years from now, and this is a famous audiobook. Anyway, so we are starting on chapter 39 of The Count of Monte Cristo. It is called The Guests, and if you remember from last week, from yesterday, we were in Rome, and Franz and Albert were saying their goodbyes to the Count, and they all agreed to, the Count agreed to meet up with Albert on a very, very specific day, the 27th of May, 21st of May, at the Rue des Helder at 10:30. So now it is just about an hour before that time is up, and Albert is waiting anxiously for the Count to arrive. And while he does that, we're simply going to describe his room. So most of his house is going to be described in great detail. I will try not to be boring with this, but it might get a little tedious. So sit back, relax, turn the volume down really, really low, get used to the ASMR of it, and just enjoy today, because I am. All right, so here we go. We are going to pop you down, pop you up, and it looks like we are just about ready to record. So, putting one foot in front of the other. Here we go. Chapter 39, The Guests. Chapter 39, The Guests. In the house in the Rue du Helder, where Albert had invited the Count of Monte Cristo, everything was being prepared on the morning of 21st of May to do honor to the occasion. Albert de Morcerf inhabited a pavilion situated at the corner of a large court and directly opposite another building, in which were the servants' apartments. Does that sound a little slow? Let's hear it back. Albert de Morcerf inhabited a pavilion situated at the corner of a large court and directly opposite another building, in which were the large court. Okay, so large court. So we're bringing it back to there, and it does not sound slow, so that's fine. Large court. Situated at the corner of a large court, and directly opposite another building, in which were the servants' apartments. 2 windows only of the pavilion faced the street. 3 other windows looked into the court, and 2 at the back, into the garden. Between the court and the garden, built in the heavy style of the imperial architecture, was the large and fashionable dwelling of the Count and Countess of Morcerf. Got a little snot going on today. It's all that cheese. I'm kidding, I didn't eat any cheese. Here we go. And Countess of Morcerf. A high wall surrounded the whole property. A high wall surrounded the whole property. And Countess of Morcerf. A high wall surrounded the whole of the property, surmounted at intervals by vases filled with flowers, and broken in the center by a large gate of gilded iron, which served as the carriage entrance. A small door, close to the lodge of the concierge, gave ingress and egress. Small door close to the lodge of the concierge allowed the servants and masters to come in and out. Iron, which served as the carriage entrance. A small door close to the lodge of the concierge gave ingress and egress to the servants and masters when they were on foot. It was easy to discover that the delicate care of a mother, unwilling to part from her son, and yet aware that a young man of the Viscount's age required the full exercise of his liberty, had chosen this habitation for Albert. Who's mommy's boy? Who's a mommy's boy? Had chosen this habitation for Albert. They were not lacking, however, evidences of what we may call the intelligent egoism of a youth who is charmed with the indolent, careless life of an only son. Careful. had chosen this habitation for Albert. They were not lacking, however, evidences of what we may call the intelligent egoism of a youth who is charmed with the indolent, careless life of an only son, and who lives, as it were, in a gilded cage. By means of the two windows looking onto the street, Albert could see all that passed. The sight of what was going on is necessary to young men. All that passed. Well, a gilded cage. Oh, we're talking about Albert's gilded cage. Ooh, whose mommy's a little protective? Albert could see all that passed. The sight of what is going on is necessary to young men who always want to see the world traverse their horizon, even if that horizon is only a public thoroughfare. Then, should anything appear to merit, should anything appear to merit, or as should anything look cool? Okay, here we go. That horizon is only a public thoroughfare. Then, should anything appear to merit a more minute examination, Albert de Morcerf could follow up his researches by means of a small gate, similar to that close to the concierge's door, which merits a particular description. We gotta talk about this door, baby. We gotta talk about this door. Which merits a particular description. It was a little entrance that seemed never to have been opened since the house was built. So entirely was it covered with dust and dirt. But the well-oiled hinges and locks told quite another story. This door was a mockery. This door was a mockery to the concierge. Well-oiled hinges and locks told quite another story. This door was a mockery to the concierge, from whose vigilance and jurisdiction it was free, and, like that famous portal in Arabian Nights, opening at the sesame of Ali Baba. It was wont to swing backward at a cabalistic word, or a concerted tap without from the sweetest voices. Ali Baba. Go back to Ali Baba. Baba-da-ba-doo. Baba-da-ba-da-ba-doo. There we go. Spinning at the sesame of Ali Baba. It was wont to swing backward at a cabalistic word, or a concerted tap from without, from the sweetest voices or the whitest fingers in the world. At the end of a long corridor, with which the door communicated. Here we go. Sweetest voices or the whitest fingers in the world. At the end of a long corridor with which the door communicated, and which formed the antechamber, was, on the right, Albert's breakfast room, looking into the court, and on the left, the salon looking into the garden. Shrubs and creeping plants covered the windows, and hid from the garden and court these two apartments, the only rooms into which, as they were on the ground floor, the prying eyes of the curious could penetrate. On the floor above were similar rooms, with the addition of a third formed out of the antechamber. These three rooms were a salon, a boudoir, and a bedroom. The salon downstairs was only in a divan? I like divan. Boudoir and a bedroom. The salon downstairs was only an Algerian divan for the use of smokers. The boudoir upstairs communicated with the bedchamber by an invisible door on the staircase. It was evident that every precaution be taken. Above this floor was a large atelier, which had been increased in size by pulling down the partitions, a pandemonium in which the artist and the dandy strove for preeminence. I have no idea what that I just said, but it sounded so cool. A pandemonium in which the artist and the dandy strove for preeminence. Gosh dang. Sometimes you could just put a sentence together and it just works. Okay, here we go.
Andy strove for preeminence.
There were collected and piled up all Albert's successive caprices, hunting horns, bass viols, flutes, bass viols? No, bass viols. That means a big bass violin. Okay, here we go.
Andy strove for preeminence.
There were collected and piled up all Albert's successive caprices, hunting horns, bass viols, flutes, a whole orchestra, for Albert had had not a taste, but a fancy for music. Easels, palettes, brushes, pencils, for music had been succeeded by painting. Foils, boxing gloves, broadswords, and single sticks, for, following the example of the fashionable young men of the time, Albert de Morcerf cultivated with far more perseverance than music and drawing the three arts that complete a dandy's education: fencing, boxing, and single stick. And it was here that he received Greiser, Cooks, and Charles Leboche. I'm going to cut that line because it doesn't make any goddamn sense.
Boxing and single stick. Fencing, boxing, and single stick.
The rest of the furniture of this privileged apartment consisted of old cabinets filled with Chinese porcelain and Japanese vases, of old armchairs in which perhaps had sat Henry V, or Sully, or Louis XVIII, or Richelieu. For two of these armchairs, adorned with a carved shield, I didn't get any of those numbers correct. It was Henry IV or Louis XIII. La 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 la.
Sat Henry V. And in Japanese vases. Filled with Chinese porcelain and Japanese vases.
Of old armchairs in which perhaps had sat Henry IV or Louis XIII. For two of these armchairs, adorned with a carved shield on which were engraved the fleur-de-lis of France on an azure field, evidently came from the Louvre, or at least some royal residence. I did not know they had the Louvre back then. I would have to learn how to do that.
Came from the Louvre, or at least some royal residence.
Over these dark and somber chairs were thrown splendid stuffs. F's are a problem anyway, but that's okay. Stuffages, stuff and things to stuff.
Came from the Louvre, or at least some royal residence.
Over these dark and somber chairs were thrown splendid stuffs, dyed beneath Persian sun or woven by the fingers of the women of Calcutta. What these stuffs did there it was impossible to say. They awaited, while gratifying the eyes, a destination unknown to the owner himself. They awaited while gratifying the eyes, a destination unknown to their owner himself.
Women of Calcutta.
Calcutta.
Sun, or woven by the fingers of the women of Calcutta.
What these stuffs did there it was impossible to say. They awaited, while gratifying the eyes, a destination unknown to their owner himself. In the meantime, they filled the place with their golden and silky reflections. In the center of the room was a baby grand piano in rosewood, but holding the potentialities of an orchestra in its narrow and sonorous cavity, and groaning beneath the weight of Beethoven, Haydn, and Mozart. On the walls over the doors on the ceiling were daggers, swords, Malay creases, maces, battle axes, gilded... We're going to cut... I don't even know what a Malay crease is. Night, nurse. Okay, and on the walls, over the doors, on the ceiling... That feels about right.
Haydn and Mozart. sir.
On the walls, over the doors, on the ceiling, were swords, daggers, maces, battle axes, gilded damasks and inlaid suits of armor, dried plants, minerals, and stuffed birds, their flame-colored wings outspread in motionless flight, their beaks forever open. This was Albert's favorite lounging place. However, the morning of the appointment, the young man had established himself in the small salon downstairs. There on a table, surrounded at some distance by a large and luxurious divan, every species of tobacco known, from the yellow tobacco of Petersburg to the black of Sinai, and so...
Of tobacco known, from the yellow...
We got a lot of snapping going on today. Today's a snapping day. I don't know what that is or why that's happening, but it's what be. We're going to take our water and we're going to put it over to this side just in case there's some reflections happening that we don't want. The reason we do ice water instead of just regular water, I know you kind of hear it clinking in the background, is because it's warm in here. And if I don't drink ice water, I will start to go crazy. In fact, over the summer, sometimes I'll have a pot of ice water just sitting here with a towel and I'll just dab myself. But if I don't start sweating, then I don't need the ice bucket. But I do need the ice water. So, here we go. From the yellow tobacco of Petersburg.
Every species of tobacco known.
From the yellow tobacco of Petersburg to the black of Sinai was exposed in pots of crackled earthenware of which the Dutch are so fond. Beside them, in boxes of fragrant wood, were ranged according to their size and quality, and, in an open cabinet, a collection of German pipes with their amber-mouthed pieces ornamented with coral and... narghiles, which we're going to say hookahs. Oh, yeah.
In an open cabinet, a collection...
Boy, Albert sure does like to smoke. Here we go.
And, in an open cabinet...
a collection of German pipes with their amber mouthpieces ornamented with color, and of hookahs with their long tubes of Morocco, awaiting the caprice or the sympathy of the smokers. Albert had himself presided at the arrangement, or rather the symmetrical derangement, which, after coffee, the guests at a breakfast of modern days love to contemplate through the vapor that escapes from their mouths and ascends in long and fanciful wreaths to the ceiling. At 10:15, a valet entered. He composed with a little groom named John, who only spoke English. All Quarter
to 10, a valet entered.
So we need a little bit of a change here. We've just been very flowy. Let's get ourselves together. Make sure we are straight up, doing all the good fun things we need to do to get this done. Here we go. At 10:15.
Long and fanciful wreaths to the ceiling.
At 10:45, a valet entered. He composed with a little groom named John, and whom only spoke English, all Albert's establishment, although the cook of the hotel was always at his service, and on great occasion, the Count's chauffeur. Cool. Vasir.
Establishment.
Establishment.
English. All Albert's establishment.
Although the cook of the hotel was always at his service, and on great occasion, the Count's chauffeur. Here we go. That's Get back to where we once belonged.
Spoke English. All Albert's establishment.
Although the cook of the hotel was always at his service, and on great occasion, the Count's chauffeur also. This valet, whose name was Germain, and who enjoyed I think we're going to give him an English accent. Germain with an English accent in French. En français.
And on great occasion, the Count's chauffeur also.
This valet, whose name was Germain, and who enjoyed the entire confidence of his young master, held in one hand a number of papers, and in the other a packet of letters which he gave to Albert. Albert glanced carelessly at the different missives. Albert glanced carelessly. Is there any other way to glance? I glanced carefully. You can't glance carefully. He carefully glanced. No.
A packet of letters which he gave to Albert.
Albert glanced carelessly at the different missives, selected two written in a small and delicate hand. Booyah. All right, let's be here and be now. Let us forget that there is a camera on our fat little face. Here we go.
A packet of letters which he gave to Albert.
Albert glanced carelessly at the different missives, selected two written in a... Albert glanced carelessly at the different missives, selected two written in a small and delicate hand, and enclosed in scented envelopes, opened them, and perused their contents with some attention. Yeah.
And perused their contents with some attention.
How did these letters come? He said. One by the post. Madame Danglars' footman left the other. Let Madame Danglars know that I accept the place she offers me in her box. Wait. Then, during the day, tell Rosa that when I leave the opera, I will sup with her as she wishes. Take her 6 bottles of different wine, Cyprus, sherry, and Malaga, and a barrel of Ostend oysters. Get them at Borel's and be sure they say they are for me. Let Madame Danglars know that I accept the place she offers me in her box. The opera is what they're talking about. Gross.
And a barrel of Ostend oysters. Get them at... Cyprus, sherry, and Malaga. And a barrel of Ostend oysters.
Get them at Borel's, and be sure you say they are for me. At what o'clock, sir, do you breakfast? What time is it now? 10:15. Very well, at 10:30. Debray will perhaps be obliged to go to the minister, and besides, Albert looked at his tablets. It is the hour I told the Count, 21st May at 10:30, and though I do not much rely upon his promise, I wish to be punctual. Is the Countess up yet? If you wish, I will inquire. Yes, ask her for one of her, claret.
If you wish, I will inquire. Does up yet? If you wish, I will inquire.
Yes. Ask her for one of her, Yes. Ask her for one of her clarets from the liquor cabinet. Mine is incomplete. And tell her I shall have the honor of seeing her about 3 o'clock, and that I request permission to introduce someone to her. The valet left the room. Albert threw himself on the divan, tore off the cover of 2 or 3 of the papers, looked at the theater announcements, made a face seeing they gave an opera and not a ballet, hunted vainly amongst the advertisements for a new tooth powder of which he had heard, and threw down one after the other the 3 leading papers of Paris, muttering, "These papers become more and more stupid every day." Man, he could be talking about the internet. Okay, I think I had some flubs.
Yes. 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 Ask her for one of her claries from the liquor cabinet. Mine is incomplete.
Cool. Yep. Doop.
Birds become more and more stupid every day.
Cool beans. All right, here we go. What are we doing? We're looking great. Okay.
Become more and more stupid every day.
A moment after, a carriage stopped before the door, and the servant announced Mr. Lucien Debray, a tall young man with light hair, clear gray eyes, and thin and compressed lips, dressed in a blue coat with beautifully carved gold buttons, a white neckcloth, and a tortoiseshell eyeglass suspended by a silken thread, and which, by an effort of the superciliary and zygomatic muscles, he fixed in his eye, centered with a half-official air, without smiling or speaking. "Good morning, Lucien, good morning," Albert said. "Your punctuality really alarms me. What do I say? Punctuality. You whom I expected last, you arrive at 5 minutes to 10, when the time fixed was half past. Has the ministry resigned?" "No, my dear fellow," returned the young man, seating himself on the divan. "Reassure yourself. We are tottering always, but we never fall, and I begin to believe that we shall pass into a state of immobility, and the affairs of the peninsula will
We never fall, and I begin to believe himself on the divan.
Yep. We got some mouth and clicking in there. Today's just a click day. I don't know what it is. You could be awesome for the rest of your life, but this Friday is a click day.
Returned the young man, seating himself on the divan.
Reassure yourself. We are tottering always, but we never fall, and I begin to believe that we shall pass into a state of immobility, and then the affairs of the peninsula will completely consolidate us. Ah, true. You drive Don Carlos out of Spain. No, my dear fellow. Do not confound our plans. We take him to the other side of the French frontier and offer him hospitality at the Borges. Borges? Yes, he has not much to complain of. Borges is the capital of Charles VII. Do you not know that all Paris knew it yesterday, and the day before it had already transpired on the Bourse? And Mr. Danglars, I do not know by what means that man contrives to obtain intelligence as soon as we do, made $1 million. And you, another order, for I see you have a blue ribbon at your buttonhole. Yes, they sent me the Order of Charles III, returned Debray carelessly. Come, do not affect indifference, but confess you were pleased to have it. Oh, it is very well as a finish to the toilette. It looks very neat on a black coat button-up. And makes you resemble the Prince of Wales or the Duke of Reichstadt. It is for that reason you see me so clearly. Because you have the Order of Charles III, and you wish to announce the good news to me. No, because I passed the night writing letters. 25 dispatches. I returned home at daybreak.
Dispatches.
I don't think he breathes or blinks. I think that's part of his charm. Here we go.
25 dispatches.
I returned home at daybreak and strove to sleep, but my head ached, and I got up to have a ride for an hour. At the Bois de Boulogne, the hunger attacked me at once. 2 enemies who rarely accompany each other and who are yet leagued against me, a sort of Carlo-Republican alliance. I then ennui and hunger attacked me at once. So he was both sad and famished.
For an hour. At the Bois de... Head ached, and I got up to have a ride for an hour.
At the Bois de Boulogne, ennui and hunger attacked me at once. 2 enemies who rarely accompany each other and who are yet leagued against me, a sort of Carlo-Republican alliance. I then recollected you gave a breakfast this morning, and here I am. I am hungry. Feed me. I am bored. Amuse me. Yeah, baby. I just found Debray. I love that when it happens so quickly. Okay, here we go.
I am bored. Amuse me.
It is my duty as your host, returned Albert, ringing the bell, while Lucien turned over, with his gold-mounted cane, the papers that lay on the table. That is just a little bit too complicated for me to take it at that pace. But that's okay. Here we go.
I am bored. Amuse me.
It is my duty as your host, returned Albert, ringing the bell, while Lucien turned over with his gold-mountain cane the papers that lay on the table. Germaine, a glass of sherry and a biscuit. In the meantime, my dear Lucien, here are cigars. Contraband, of course. Try them and persuade the minister to sell us such instead of poisoning us with cabbage leaves. Poisoning us with cabbage leaves.
Contraband, of course.
It's contraband, of course. Legal as shit. These are Cuban, buddy.
My dear Lucian, here are cigars. Contraband, of course.
Try them and persuade the minister to sell us such instead of poisoning us with cabbage leaves. My goodness, I will do nothing of the kind. The moment they come from the government, you would find them execrable. Besides, that does not concern the home but the financial department. Address yourself to Mr. Human, section of the Indirect Contributions, Corridor A, number 26. On my word, said Albert, you astonish me by the extent of your knowledge. Take a cigar. Really, my dear Albert, replied Lucien, lighting a manila at a rose-colored taper that burnt in a beautifully enameled stand. How happy you are to have nothing to do. You do not know your own good fortune. And what would you do, my dear diplomat?
Nothing to do. You do not know your own good fortune.
And what would you do, my dear diplomat, replied Morcerf, with a slight degree of irony in his voice, if you did nothing? What, private secretary to a minister, plunged at once into European cabals and Parisian intrigues, having kings and, better still, queens to protect, parties to unite, elections to direct, making more use of your cabinet with your pen and your telegraph than Napoleon did with his battlefields with his... Almost. It's a good speech. It's a good speech.
With your pen, your telegraph, than Napoleon. Parties to unite, elections to direct, queens to protect, parties to...
I'm going to put a pause after queens to protect. Well, it's like I drank too much coffee today. Okay, here we go.
Having kings and, better still, queens to protect.
Parties to unite, elections to direct, making more use of your cabinet with your pen and your telegraph than Napoleon did of his battlefields with his sword and his victories, possessing 25,000 francs a year besides your place, a horse for which Chateau Renaud would offer you 400 louis, and which you would not part with, a tailor who never disappoints you. With the opera, the jockey club, and other diversions, you cannot amuse yourself. Well, I amuse you. How? By introducing you to a new acquaintance. A man or a woman? A man. I know so many men already. But do you not know this man? I know so many men already. Oh my god, I fucking found Lucien. So good. Here we go.
Man. I know so many men already.
But you do not know this man. Where does he come from? The end of the world? Farther still, perhaps. My goodness, I hope he does not bring our breakfast with him. Oh, no, our breakfast comes from my father's kitchen. Are you hungry? Humiliating as such a confession is, I am. But I dined at Mr. de Villefort's, and lawyers always give you very bad dinners. You would think they felt some remorse. Did you ever remark that? Deprecate other persons' dinners. You ministers give such splendid ones. Yes, but we do not invite people of fashion. If we were not forced to entertain a parcel of country boobies because they think and vote with us, We should never dream of dining at home, I assure you. Well, take another glass of sherry and another biscuit. Willing, your Spanish wine is excellent. You see, we were quite right to pacify that country. Yes, but Don Carlos. Well, Don Carlos will drink Bordeaux, and in 10 years we will marry his son to the little queen. You will then obtain the golden fleece if you are still in the ministry. I think, Albert, you have adopted the system of feeding me on smoke this morning. Well, you must allow it is the best thing for the stomach. But I hear Beauchamp in the next room. You can dispute together, and that will pass away the time. About what? About the papers. My dear friends, said Lucien with an air of sovereign contempt, do I ever read the papers? Then you will dispute the more. Cool. Then you will dispute the more. Okay, we've got a Beauchamp coming. So we're going to have...
Then you will dispute the more.
And who is Beauchamp? Who is Beauchamp? Rising and advancing. He's quite right. He's quite right. Knowing what he does. Good day, Commander. Good day, Commander. Ah, you know that already. Excuse me. Where's his voice gonna sit? Where is Beauchamp's voice gonna sit? Where does it sit? Let's put him low. Let's put him low. As you know that already. As you know that already. Yeah, let's put him down. Cool. All right, here we go.
Then you will dispute the more.
Mr. Beauchamp, announced the servant. Come in, said Albert, rising and advancing to meet the young man. Here's Debray, who detests you without reading you, so he says. He is quite right, returned Beauchamp, for I criticize him without knowing what he does. Good day, Commander. Oh, you know that already, said the private secretary, smiling and shaking hands with him. Excuse me. And what do they say of it in the world? In which world? We have so many worlds in the year of grace, 1838. In the entire political world. Oh, we're back. Dangling modifiers.
Smiling and shaking hands with him.
Pardieu, excuse me. Good to see you.
Said the private secretary, smiling and shaking hands with him.
My goodness. And what do they say of it in the world? In which world? We have so many worlds in the year of grace, 1838. In the entire political world, of which you are one of the leaders. They say it is quite fair, and that showing so much red you ought to reap a little blue. God damn it. I don't know who is speaking. Okay, see, we're getting to the end. We shall sit down to the table. All right. Trying to figure out who's talking. The entire... Oh. Hold on for just a second. Let's finish this off. Okay. So, pardon.
Good day, Commander. Oh, you know that already. So...
Pardieu,
said the private secretary, smiling and shaking hands with him.
Pardieu. And what do they say of it in the world? In which world? We have so many worlds in the year of grace, 1838. in the entire political world, of which you are one of the leaders. They say it is quite fair, and that sowing so much red, you ought to reap a little blue. Come, that is not bad, said Lucien. Why do you not join our party, my dear Beauchamp? With your talents, you would make your fortune in 3 or 4 years. I only await one thing before following your advice. That is a minister who will hold office for 6 months. My dear Albert, one word, for I must give poor Lucien a respite. Do we breakfast or dine? I must go to the chamber, for our life is not an idle one. You only breakfast. I wait 2 persons, and the instant they arrive, we shall sit down to the table. Okay. Get the timing done. All right, so we are finished with that particular chapter, coming in at 17 minutes, 25 seconds, which is not bad for, was it about 35, 40 minutes? Okay, well, we were a little slow. We had to take 2 minutes to read the book and figure out where the hell we are, which is not a bad thing to do this early in the morning. Anyway, we are capping it off today. When we meet up again on Monday morning, we're going to be talking Chapter 40, The Breakfast. And I'm assuming the Count's going to show up, which is a good assumption. Anyway, thanks for hanging out, or thanks for